Welcome everyone today to our panel discussion about the role of venues in the new world of events. And we're just going to wait a couple of moments while everyone comes into the webinar and joins us, because we've got a fantastic attendance joining us today. So while we're doing that, what I might get you to do is open your chat function, toggle it to all panelists and attendees, and just pop in there your name and where you're joining us from today, and we'll get started in a couple of moments. So a little bit about, we've got people joining us today from venues, event management companies, organisations. Hi Margaret, Louise, fantastic. We've got people joining us from all over Australia, which is great. So we would love you to just pop in the chat function your name, where you're joining us from, and also feel free to join in the conversation as we go along in the panel discussion. So we'll just wait a couple of more minutes and then we'll make a start. Fantastic. So we've got people Melbourne, Adelaide, Cairns. How's the weather up there? Probably a little warmer than down in Melbourne today. I'll absorb your sunshine through, through the thought of you being on the call. Okay, well, we might make a start. So as I said, thank you everyone for joining us. It's fantastic to have you here. This is actually the 6th in the Adapting in 2020 webinar series that Fetching Events and Communications has been running. And it's great to see some familiar names joining us again, and to those joining us for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you bear with me, I will refer to my notes as we go along. My name is Georgie. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer at Fetching Events and Communications, and I'm thrilled to host this panel today on what's such an important topic, and a topic that will keep us on our toes probably while we live in a COVID-safe world. And I'll introduce the panel shortly, but before I do want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're all meeting today. And as you can see from everyone in the chat function, we are coming together from many lands across Australia, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So we've got a bit of a bumper discussion planned with our panel, and just a bit of housekeeping before I introduce them. This is being recorded and we will be sending a copy of this out following the panel discussion. So then, new world of events and how venues and event managers will need to work together is really key as we start to look at returning and recommencing our events. And I'm thrilled to bring together a panel of experts today, starting with Carla Offord, CEO of the Conference Shop. Welcome, Carla.
Thanks for having me, Georgie. I'm excited.
We've got Caroline DeVoe-Clayton, Head of Conference and Events at Village Roadshow Theme Parks and SeaWorld Resort and Conference Centre. Did I get that right, Caroline?
You got it perfect. Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Fantastic. And we're thrilled to have Damien Kitto, CEO of Adelaide Convention Bureau, joining us as well.
Thanks, Georgie. Glad to be here. Thank you.
So, as I said, we are in a new world of events. It's not a matter of just necessarily tweaking the old, but looking what this new world will mean for us. And what it forces and brings about is an opportunity where venues and event organisers will really need to work closely together. It's, as I would have said in the description, it's no longer a case of just sending a floor plan and a run sheet through and picking your catering items. It's going to need to be a lot more of a collaboration and a lot more detailed planning. Gone are the days where we can just say, oh, we need to add another table. We've got 5 extra guests. We just know that won't be able to happen with the COVID safe world that we're now living in. And what I want to start off with, Carla, before we do, just a reminder to everyone, do join in the conversation. We hopefully will have a bit of time for comments at the questions at the end, but certainly put any comments you've got in the chat function. So Carla, as a venue sourcing company, which the Conference Shop is, what are you seeing happening with venues at the moment?
Oh, Hi, Georgie. I'm saying, look, this is a very new world, as you were saying, and a very, hate this word, but unprecedented time for our industry. And look, for the past 4 months, a lot of the hotels and venues have actually been laying dormant and a lot of people have been stood down. So as we're, sort of starting to re-emerge, I've seen that venues in general are really trying to adapt to this changing market. So across the board, I'll give a general broad overview. So, I mean, the obvious one is, all the staff are being trained properly, to COVID safety standards, everything from hygiene to cleaning, gone are the hospital grade chemicals or commercial grade in with hospital grade. It's all about sanitisation everywhere you go. Contactless is also a very key component to the guest experience this time around. So check-in, check-out is all contactless. People on arrival now will be given keys in packs. There'll be COVID packs as well. There's sanitisation stations everywhere. There's, the opportunity for people to just tap and go. Even some hotels are putting up self-scanners for passports as well and credit cards. So it's very much a different kind of experience, even through to accommodation rooms. Yes, they're going to be cleaned within an inch of their life, but high touch point items are being removed from accommodation rooms. So that means alarm clocks, books, those kind of things, and lots of in-house dining will be on offer, more so than ever, I think. But one key change is the food delivery for conferencing. So I've had so many robust discussions about this with lots of different hotels. So, I mean, I think gone are the day of buffets. I think we all do know that. I'm actually surprised to find there are still some hotels that are doing it. Instead of the traditional buffet, they will be handing out individual servers to each person that comes through. But it will be predominantly either seated for dinners or lunches. For conferencing, it will be single serve portions, even for, day delegate packages, for morning and afternoon teas. It's very much so about, individual packs again, or it will be served by hotel attendants. Some hotels are bringing coffee carts as well, then others are just serving. So it's a whole different way of doing things. It'll be a lot more time allocated to these areas that we probably didn't have to do before. I mean, I remember how many conferences it comes break time, everybody rushes out because they want a coffee. That's not going to be happening anymore either. So in the conference and meeting areas, it'll be the same thing, lots of signage everywhere reminding people to be COVID safe, observe social distancing, the little stickers on the floor, reduce capacities in conference spaces. Bathrooms will be a big thing that we need to think about. So if we have a big conference group in the room and we are all breaking at the same time, we may need to look at staggering breaks because we won't all be able to head to that bathroom. So it's just, there's lots of shifts that we're going to have to keep in mind, but it's really good to see that hotels are really thinking about those shifts. There's ones that are sort of putting it into practice and are doing it now, and there's others that are sort of starting to think about that, maybe aren't at the same pace as some of the others, but most of them are actually putting together COVID safe plans, which is also really encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know in the last couple of weeks, I've had, a flurry of emails from venues and convention bureaus and convention centres on what they're implementing.
Yes.
And certainly as an event manager, when you get that information, you immediately gravitate towards that venue because they've done their research, they've done their work, even if it's not all complete, because we know this is a massive task and it's it's going to change.
Yes.
We know restrictions will ease and then potentially tighten, like they have down in Melbourne at the moment here. And we know if we look across the world, that's a pattern that potentially will happen. So it is a time where we need to adapt and be flexible. And I just want to pick up on and talking about, hotel staff doing training. That's something as event managers that we should all be doing. And I know I've completed the infection control course that the Australian government has, and feel free to pop in the chat function if there's any great courses you've been doing as an event manager to come up to speed, because when you do those courses, because we need to be just as informed as the venue, you start to think how that's going to impact. So like you said, toilets, not only will we potentially have reduced capacities in the bathroom, people will be washing their hands for longer.
Yes.
Potentially have a bunch of not all basins will be available. That's going to impact our breaks. So as event managers, we need to be really informed, and that can be tricky because there's so much information, but that's why it's really around working together. So so on that, what sort of conversations should event organisers and venues be having, Carla?
I think venues need to be really transparent about what's doable and what isn't doable. So I find that some hotels are so eager to have the business that they may overlook a few things, but when it comes down to it, they actually can't do the business. So I think transparency is going to be a key issue. I think talk timings, that's going to be massive change to a lot of event orders, because it will take a lot longer to get through, your morning teas, your afternoon teas, your lunches. That's going to take a fair chunk of time, just moving people. So I would suggest even hotels are thinking about flow charts, how people move in and around the hotel, because through food courts or, any restaurant or food area, traditionally now there is one ingress and exit sort of thing. So you need to, I think that's a really good thing to have. I think make sure every floor plan that goes out to clients is a social distance floor plan, because that's something I have a bit of an issue with sometimes. So I usually get, under normal circumstances, this is our floor plan. So then I have to go back and say, well, it's not normal circumstances. Can we get so it's being really upfront. Don't be afraid. You will not lose the business. I think the more transparent you are, the more you're willing to work together, the better the outcome in the end. I think also the conversations around the COVID safe plans. Event managers need to, I'm drowning in them at the moment, but I see that as my role when I'm talking to my clients, to make sure that we're across as many as we can be, but everyone can be.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information out there.
That's a really, there's a couple of points I want to pick up there around the transparency. It's so important. And I did a site visit. I snuck in a site visit, thankfully, before I didn't know we were going back to lockdown then. So, did 2 site visits, and the first one, they showed us the room, they told us the capacity. And then when I asked about the COVID safe plan, I had a bit of a blank look and no concept of how that would actually impact the event. The second venue I went to, and actually they're on the call here, Daniela, I can say that as soon as we asked about the COVID safe plan, well, they didn't have it. She told me what they were doing with it. She could tell me off the bat what the reduced capacity was based on the current restrictions. So already I'm more confident in that venue because they're actually telling me stuff. And it's going to be up to venues and event managers to be transparent with each other, but it's also up to event managers. We need to be very open with our clients.
Well, that was going to be,
educate our clients around how this is going to impact the event. And I work on I'm looking at one in November. Hopefully we might be able to run, where we know the capacity at the moment it's reduced from 500 to 200. That's the first thing we need to be upfront about. And when you were saying about buffet breakfasts, for me it's also not just doing what the regulations are, but even if you've deemed it safe, is it is it a bit tone deaf to be doing something like a buffet breakfast when really everything's telling us otherwise? And I saw something on Instagram the other day that I had to take a double take at, because it was high tea platters.
Yes,
And
I
probably
saw
in
that.
Melbourne, we're a bit more heightened to the restrictions because of what's been going on around us. But I had to keep looking, is this current? Now, maybe they deemed it was safe, I don't know. But against the backdrop of everything that's happening, also look about the perception and how comfortable your guests will feel. We've got a question from Kate around packed hot and cold lunches, and Kayla, we'll actually get to that when we talk to Caroline, because we're going to talk about what sort of food they're doing there.
Can I just go back
Yes.
on that last point? The conversations, what you were touching on before, is definitely, I think it comes down to event managers also knowing their event, understanding the event, and being transparent about their brief, because it will really impact now that there's a reduction in numbers in rooms. So it's one thing to say we have an event for 250 people and then forget about the expo component, or we might have, you know, X, Y, Z. I think if you're transparent from the beginning, or, you know, give the brief as much detail as possible, because you could get down the line and go, oh, that's right, we can't fit it in because of reduction. So really know your brief and let the hotels know as much detail as possible.
Absolutely. And I know for as an event agency, we will be running tabletop exercises and scenarios, because that's when we will catch things of, oh, hang on, if we've got everyone moving there, we're going to have, you know, we're going to lose our distancing. So event managers, it's on us to, you know, be doing tabletop scenarios, risk management exercises, all those things that we probably for conferences and dinners we haven't needed to do to the level that mass participation events have, but we do now based on our new world. And you're so right, Carla, with knowing our event. We really need to know our event, because we can't communicate to the venues if we aren't really clear. And I sort of liken it to when you go to a hairdresser and you have this style in your mind and you say, yeah, I want it like this, and you just think the hairdresser's a mind reader and knows exactly what you mean, and then the haircut doesn't turn out like that, and you blame the hairdresser when it's actually you haven't communicated. So that's going to be really important. And as you say, it's understanding your event. So if you've got a room that you know based on restrictions or social distancing can fit 100, and so you sell those 100 seats, and then you decide, gee, we've had such an influx of interest, let's make it a hybrid event. So what do you need for a hybrid event? You need a camera. You need a camera platform. A camera platform takes up a footprint on a floor plan. You can't just, you know, take seats away now or move seats to other areas because of social distancing. So that'll be really important.
But I think, I was just going to say, I think if we're just really patient, though, the underlying thing is being patient with both sides, working together, because I think it's an opportunity to learn as we go and probably build a better platform altogether across the board. And I think it will be a give and take, a two-way street. And I think everyone's ready for it and wanting it. So I think event managers shouldn't be afraid to ask the questions either, and same with the venues.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So finally, Carla, as a venue sourcing, how has this changed your role? How has it changed what people are looking for in venues?
Oh, look, I think it's changed our role. Well, you know, we're obviously a venue sourcing, you know, agent, so we do that. But I'm finding that we're actually more of an advisor. We've moved into an advisory sort of, you know, educator kind of role, really, with our clients and also with some hotels. We're trying to get procedures right. So if we're sourcing for clients, and, you know, luckily we are still getting bits and pieces in and working on next year, but we're finding that we're having to pull that information a little bit from hotels. So we're now starting to set up our own procedures so that out of habit, every hotel gives us a COVID safe plan that gives us a floor plan that includes social distancing. We're asking the questions about flow charts. We're asking, you know, we've heard a little bit about airflow. So we're asking hotels about that because, you know, that's been a bit of a bone of contention, but we're not really sure where that stands. So it's, it's sort of getting clients to think a little bit more too about their events. And we're also in the position where people are asking us to find solutions for them a lot. So it's like, oh my God, I had a client the other day wanting, it was actually a really good question. It was, how am I going to get name tags? You know, I'm going to have 100 people. I'm going to be by myself at a registration desk. And I thought, you have to rethink about how you're going to do the registration. So it's talking through those kind of issues.
Yes.
And I think, which is great because it makes us, you know, think outside the square as well. So yeah, it's more that kind of role as well.
Absolutely. No, and I agree with you. It does make us really look at our events. And if anything, we're going to come out stronger because we're not going to just do what we always did.
Yeah.
But it's looking at everything, you know, not just the floor plan, but okay, if we know that all our delegates usually arrive at a similar time, and there's only 2 entrances into the venue, or they all arrive at dinner for that, what we previously had was pre-dinner drinks, you know, how will that change it? And it will depend on the venue, you know, no matter how big or small the venue is, no matter how big or small the event is, it will depend on the time of your event. So we certainly know what we're talking about at the moment is that this is what's happening now. In 3 months could be different, 6 months, you know, it could be different again. So it's really going to be how we can work that. And as you say, it will require us to be flexible and open. You know, if you're a venue and you're working on your plan, you don't have it yet, just be open and talk about that.
Start the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So then if we look at what does this mean when working with a venue, and I'll throw to you, Caroline, tell us about what you've been doing at your conference centre.
We've been really busy, actually. Remember, so just for everybody's, you know, knowledge as well, is our conference and events team. We don't look only after SeaWorld Resort, we also look after all the parks. So we do events and, you know, conferences, SeaWorld, Movie World, Paradise Country, Australian Outback Spectacular, Wet and Wild, if you want to get wet and wild. So it's been busy navigating, I think, you know, through the constant influx, you know, of information that's, you know, being thrown at us. Big documents as well, you know, to, you know, making sure obviously that we've got, you know, everything under control, working on our COVID safe plans as well. For events, you know, business events and daytime guests, all of that is a bit different as well. So we've had to adapt to all of that. I heard the other day, and his name is escaping me, I can't remember, but he said something about at the moment we're all surfing, and I really like that because indeed we never know where the wave's going to come from. And so we're all a bit like, okay, what next? You know, because everything is changing all the time. So we've been obviously for us, you know, for our team, being in touch with, you know, I mean, close contact with our chefs, you know, our operations manager, you know, I mean, everything basically that we need to run an event. So we've been lucky because the resort actually hasn't closed during COVID. We've always been open. So that has allowed us obviously to get better prepared, you know, with all our signing on the floor. Sorry.
Signing.
You know, little signs, about social distancing, and obviously getting our COVID safe plan, all our hygiene, all our team pretty much have completed their, what we've done is the TAFE COVID dining training. So all across the company, we've had to do that. No matter what level you're at, we've all had to do it. And we do have a lot of employees, as you can imagine. But that's been really good. But you know, it's so it, you know, it's been busy. You know, and for us as well, whilst obviously it's a little bit quieter, it was a great opportunity. We've always looked outside the square because we've got obviously a lot of unique venues. Before we had the conference center at the resort, which opened 5 years ago, we always had a creative hat on to say, okay, what can I use in the park to be able to do my opening, you know, my opening conference and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always been like that for us. So I guess it has prepared us for the time that we live in order to now think, okay, well, where can I do this and where can I put this, etc., etc. And it's non-stop. Like, we have weekly meetings with all our team, with our chefs, F&B, operations, etc., at all levels across the parks and the resort, just to make sure that we keep on track. The document, I'm sure everyone will agree, but the document, the COVID document that we get from Queensland Health and QHA and all of that, is pretty intense, I'd say, to go through, to understand exactly, you can do a wedding ceremony, but you can't really do a wedding reception with that ceremony. So it's really, there's a lot of, information to go through, and making sure that we do the right thing, obviously. And we've been preparing our floor plans. We've got all our floor plans ready. With our 4 square meter social distancing, so we know exactly what we can do where, which is good, and what we can do for everything else as well. So we're ready.
That's great. And look, I love that. There's a few things I want to pick up on there. One was around, there is so much information to go through, and that's why, as an industry, if we can work together and people that we've perhaps seen previously as competitors, but actually work together, because the more we can share our information, whether it's event management companies sharing what they're doing, venues sharing what they're doing, our learnings, our do's and don'ts, it will make us all much stronger. And, you talk about the creativity. There is some fantastic stuff happening, even just with decals. I went to the aquarium and, the decals, had little flipper feet on. Now, of course, immediately it actually becomes fun. You need to stand on it, but it takes away that kind of clinical element. My local cafe posted some photos of a coffee roaster that the decals say things like, "I've got a spot right here for you," and so they've made the messaging. So, at your conference, you could actually be putting fun messaging around your conference on those decals that gets people to stand on them. Some of you may have seen the pictures in Paris of the cafes on the sidewalk where people can only sit every 2 tables. And what they've done on the alternate tables is they put giant teddy bears having coffee and croissants. Now, I'm not saying we all put teddy bears in our conference centre, but suddenly it didn't look really sparse on the sidewalk. It actually looked really fun. So it is completely rethinking how we do things. Floor plans, it's gala dinners. I'm not just wanting to take chairs away from banquet tables. So let's maybe not have banquet tables. Let's look at other ways that we can set the room that's still socially distant, but maybe, keeps the integrity of the experience a bit more. Carolyn, what's been the biggest change for you? Or what do you think, we'll talk about food in a minute, but what will do you think will be the biggest change when you start running events?
I don't know, my biggest change right now has been to learn how to slow down. Anybody who knows me, that's a little difficult.
We do, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We do need to look after ourselves.
The biggest change, I think, and again, for us, for our team, for myself, has been obviously to learn our new capacities.
Yes.
Because we've got some of the largest venues on the Gold Coast, but now, we need to think, oh, hang on, my capacities have reduced. So, we're pretty lucky. We've got about 64 venues, across our properties. And even within SeaWorld Resort and SeaWorld, we've got about, almost 10,000 square meters of outdoor indoor space to play with. And it's looking at that, but that's probably the biggest change, is to, stop for a minute, reflect and say, well, hang on a sec, what spaces have I got to work with? And probably as well, like you were talking about transparency and collaboration. And I really think that that's probably going to be the way to go. Like venues can even help each other, I think.
Yeah.
You know, venues that are maybe close together. You might have a venue who has, you know, a huge amount of beds to offer, but maybe their conference space is a bit smaller. But then you've got a venue next door that's got huge conference space, maybe not that many rooms. Let's work together.
Yeah.
You know, let's try to retain the business for our region. You know, how can we do that? So that's probably what I'm thinking as well. Maybe reaching out also to other venues and say, hey, what can we do?
Yeah.
But also transparency, like, yeah, sharing ideas. I mean, you know, I don't think we can all be working, you know, in our own little world anymore individually.
No.
Like, share ideas. If Carla or you, Georgie, or Danny, or anyone, you know, said, oh, you know, look at this great thing that we've done, or I've seen somewhere in Paris with teddy bears on the seats, or, you know, can you put polar bears? I'm going to put polar bears on my seats, no problems.
It's funny,
you know,
it's
and
so
I think
true.
that's really good.
Absolutely, and I'll put a link up at the end, but Fetching Events send out, well, we've moved our monthly e-news, well, we moved it to weekly, and then just recently we've moved it to fortnightly. And one thing we include in there is what we're loving. And we're just trying to share, we share links of industry trends or things that are happening. I haven't been to the movies in Australia since COVID, so I don't know what it's like, but a friend who's working in Dubai on Expo 2020, which is now Expo 2021, he went to the movies and he was saying, and I said, what's it like sitting in the cinema? And he said, well, what they had done was put reserved signs on every second seat, but it was reserved for a movie star. So he was sitting between, I think, Natalie Portman and Helen Mirren. Now, how easy is that? But how fun, you know? So, but it does force us to think, and I'm just thinking, I run graduations, and one of the things is that, you know, we get each row up at a time and they line up to go on the stage. Now, if they need to line up 1.5 meters apart, or maybe it changes to a meter or 50 centimeters, whatever it is, that's going to take up space in venues that we don't have a lot of space. You know, we're often tight in there lining up. So this is when we start to do a really serious tabletop planning to get through every element of the event. And it, you know, for everyone watching, we'd love to hear anything, you know, that you've seen that you really loved in how someone had adapted, or, you know, a fun sign that a venue had, or even going out to dinner. And I've been saying to everyone, as an event manager, well, not in Melbourne at the moment, but, you know, in other states, if you, and regional Victoria, if you can go out to dinner, go and experience what it's like in a COVID safe environment, because you will start to pick up things. And I certainly know one dinner I went to at the local pub, I felt very safe in the dining room. Everything was in place there. But when we walked in the pub, the registration desk where we needed to sign in was really close to the door. So you swung the door open, you're basically at the desk. And then what happened was every time someone came in, they basically ran into me. So suddenly everything that was done well in the dining room, it didn't matter because that first part was too cramped. So go and experience what it's like. So things like, you know, notepads and pens. Caroline, what are you know, things like that. What are you doing with those sort of things?
Yeah, we've done, we're doing a little COVID safe little pack. So for each delegate, basically a little pack with, you know, obviously sanitized pen and notepad, and you've even got your little mints in there. Absolutely. We had to change the way we serve water, obviously, so we can't have jugs of water on the table. So now all guests get bottled water, not ideal to have plastic water bottle, but if anybody has any idea, please share. Absolutely. And obviously around then around obviously coffee breaks, etc. It's you know, the experience, you know, I think as long as, you know, people feel, you know, that they're safe, you know, obviously with sanitizing, you know, all the time. And I guess, you know, when we get to maybe, you know, the next part about, you know, communication, that's some of the really, really important aspects for the venue.
Absolutely, and that leads in well around communication, because it's not just communication between the venues and event managers and the event managers and the client, it's communication to the delegates. So when we're so trained not to have bottled water, but the reality is we will, and I've certainly sat on a lot of sustainable event hackathons and webinars, and they're acknowledging that we will need to go back to bottled water. But how are we communicating that to our guests? And you know, looking through the venue that you're working with, Event Safe Plan, and you know, there's a couple like the ICC have got an amazing, really thorough one that's about 23 pages long. I recommend anyone to jump on and have a look at that. And one, you know, they talk about no jugs on table. That's one of the tiny things they talk about. So how do you communicate that to your guests? Melbourne Showgrounds have done another terrific one. And, you know, they talk about reduced capacities in bathrooms, reduced use of basins. So, you know, it might be, I don't know, depending on the restrictions, every second basin is cordoned off, or only a certain amount of basins will be allowed. So once again, how does that impact your program? If it's going to take longer for the bathroom break, and as Carla said, longer for the coffee break, how do you work that in, and how do you communicate that? Particularly for those first events, you know, when we go to our second conference or our third dinner in a COVID safe world, we might be ready for that. But how, you know, it's those first events that will be taking place that will be quite jarring, potentially for guests and delegates if we haven't communicated directly. And as you say, if we haven't made them feel safe, it's not just about making this clinically safe environment, it's also about making a safe environment that still has the experience.
Can I just say, Georgie, absolutely. It's also about, I think for venues particularly, is making the journey experience still a nice one for delegates without it being so clinical. So it's finding that balance as well, I think.
And I certainly know there's restaurants in Melbourne that in the first lockdown were completely reimagining and redesigning their restaurant space so that it didn't feel like you were going to a hospital, you know. They could still do it safe, but we're really keeping that journey and guest experience. So Caroline, we know food is a big element of any event, make or break. What sort of things are you doing around food? And we've certainly had a question around, do you think clients are expecting individually packed lunches, hot/cold, or are the expectations to still have a similar style hot buffet option to show that value for money?
Before I get to the food, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things from before about communication. We as a venue, we can do everything right. I mean, we can put all the plans in place and have all your sanitization, your hygiene, etc. If the client don't follow that, then like you said before, you go to a place, you get pushed, and all the good work, you know, goes to waste. I think, you know, in addition to the communication, obviously, you know, especially when working through, you know, with a PCO, you know, an event manager, I think we have to relook also at our lead times. I know everybody's keen to get the business and okay, let's do it quick, etc., etc. But let's have a look at the lead time as well, you know, so that we are, you know, prepared, that we can, you know, work out the best plan, you know, from the client. The PCO knows the client better than we do, okay? So I think, like you said before, getting all the information, as much information as possible, that includes the AV requirements, because there's a lot of times post-COVID or before COVID where we go to brief and we're like, oh, what's your AV? Oh, we don't know what about the AV. So all of that now, we can't just leave it to the
last
chance.
minute.
Oh, well, we'll work it out later. I think everything we need to know, like, okay, what's your AV?
Oh, we've lost Caroline there, but we'll come back to her. But it's so true about that lead time. And I know Damien and I have certainly spoken about it, and I'll throw to Damien shortly, because it will take more planning. And I certainly know.
That's a great team effort. That's fantastic. You know.
Sorry, Caroline, we lost you there. We lost you there for a minute, but we've got you back. So, but you're so right. We lost you, but we've got you back. But it's so true. And I've often had venues say to me, you know, guests came for dinner, but it was actually a cocktail party, and then the venue's reputation was damaged because the guest said, the venue didn't serve enough food, but in fact the client had never ordered anything other than a few canapes. So it's really crucial for event managers, either in-house or external, to work with their clients and their guests in really communicating everything that's in place. So Caroline, do you want to tell us about the buffet, well, what you've been doing for breakfasts and what you're looking at having planned for lunches?
Yes. Am I back? Yes. Okay,
You're
cool.
back. Yes.
Okay, so we can't, obviously at the moment, we you know, as everybody know, buffets are out. Cocktail stand-up functions are out. Everything has to be sit down. Okay. We've just only got confirmation now that clients can actually walk to the bar and pick up a drink. So again, continue surfing the wave, because that might change again, but at the moment we can, as long as you respect social distancing. So again, this is all the sort of food delivery that we are used to, because obviously we've been doing very, very large events. We've been, working a lot with outdoor venues within our parks, etc. So for breakfast, for example, we've been absolutely slammed at the resort over school holidays. We're like, 100%. It's, and we are a big resort. We've got 400 rooms. So any one time you can have, 1,500 people there. So basically at the moment, we've actually converted the conference center in like a, pick me up breakfast. So we're preparing. So we've got a battery of staff. Obviously, we've brought back all our event staff as well, which is fantastic. And we're just doing a grab and go breakfast for all our guests, and that works absolutely beautifully. So yeah, hot food, croissants, are your usual. So we've had to find ways to adapt. We've had a few smaller conferences already where because obviously we've got a lot of space and we don't have 10 conferences at the same time, we've been allowed to obviously serve sit-down lunches and sit-down morning tea and afternoon tea, with, with social distancing. So that worked really well. Obviously, when we've got, the bigger, events coming back, then yes, we'll have to look at, possibly a boxed, morning tea, afternoon tea, or a boxed lunch. And the beauty as well is, in the past, you may have had people, staying within the conference room or in a pre-function area. I mean, we've got the beach opposite the resort. So, grab your little picnic, and go and sit on the beach, So I do agree about the break time, though, that will have to become a little, more extended, because people will need a little more time. But yeah, go and sit in the sun, by the pool, on the beach, go and have your lunch. As long as the communication to the client, we've had huge conferences where we've done the lunchbox already and all of that, and that goes down with the treat, because we vary the menu. Obviously, we cater for all dietaries, etc. But the communication to the client from the event manager is important. When they come into a room, that's one thing I'd like to say, because it's happened. When they come into, the client arrive in the room and the room is set up a certain way, they cannot go around and move everything to get closer together. No, can't do that, okay? Because then we're going to come in and say, and listen, if I wanted to be a police officer, I'll be in the police force, okay? We're not here to police people, If they need to understand that this has been set up this way for their own safety.
Yes.
And that, yes, no, you can't take away the table.
Yeah.
We see everything.
So important. And just going back to Kayla's question, same as Caroline, I've run events where we've had packed lunches, and certainly, there's been plenty in the packed lunch that people haven't felt shortchanged or felt that it was a cheaper option, because in fact it wasn't a cheaper option. It was done for convenience. So,
Georgie, can I just say also,
quickly, and then I want to throw to Damien.
Sorry, just very quickly, even just on the breakfast. A broad, again, overview is a lot of hotels are actually going for the continental too, so they're stepping away from the buffet, allowing people to pre-order hot food if it's a larger number, or if they're a smaller group, they're allowed to order in the morning, but they'll have their cold food, I suppose the continental component, they're waiting for them, and then they can order the hot.
Yeah, and I certainly know I'm working on a dinner, and it's not until next April, but it is in the health and emergency services sector.
Yep.
We usually have dessert, canapé platters. We're already talking, even if restrictions have eased, for the safety and the I guess perception, we'll still look at doing maybe an individually boxed dessert. I mean, that's lovely when you sit down, you've already got your little treat there. So there's things we can do, and then for events that aren't, you know, in a fixed, or maybe not a fixed venue, but like a conference venue that, you know, it's a festival, we need to start thinking about, okay, if we have food trucks, how does that actually work? And then if people are taking away things, where are they going to congregate to sit, and how do we space that out? So Damien has been sitting very patiently and very quietly while we've yapped. So Damien, the Adelaide Convention Bureau has been doing some fantastic work, and I loved the essay, Safe Plan, that you sent out. And I know you've been working with lots of groups, and certainly today we've been talking about working together. Do you want to tell us a little bit about collaboration that's been happening within the industry across the country?
Yeah, thanks, Georgie. I think if we divide the scenario that we're in two phases, when COVID hit back in sort of February and March, we saw it coming, and then bang, the global industry, including the Australian industry, closed down overnight. Convention bureaus, event managers, venues, we tried to do absolutely everything to try and save the business. And so our team, I know, along with our team, Adelaide Partners, worked incredibly hard to try and postpone business out of 2020 and into 21 and beyond. And I'm going to say the positivity across the whole industry, global, but also the domestic business events industry, has been outstanding. I think it's an absolute credit to everyone how positively, you know, despite the dire situation we're in, how we've approached it. Because again, we're about a people business. It's about exchanging business, creating business opportunity, but it's about money as well, of course. And unless events take place, there's no money. So the positivity in those early phases to postpone business was quite outstanding. We've now moved into the sort of the health and the safety phase, and some brilliant comments made to date. And the global industry, the Australian industry, absolutely has been working together. There's a lot of information out there. If you look in the global form, there's GMIC, the Joint Meetings Industry Council. They've developed the principles for the global industry. They're backed by ICA. A lot of people will be familiar with ICA. You know, UCI, the global exhibitions body. So it's us being, you know, association members and contributing to those associations to develop sort of codes of practice and principles to how the industry works together. From a domestic point of view, clearly, which is of interest to everyone, there's the Business Events Council of Australia. There's all the other associations, including our association and convention bureaus that sit on that. And again, they've been developing a level of principles, a framework, and communicating that to the federal government. And to have the high-level principles developed for mass gatherings, and of course we're a controlled gathering of professional people, that's been really important to give confidence to government that, hey, one day, and as we are now, we're actually open, able to be open and host business events. So there's all this level of information where people are contributing, working together. What's really important, because all of that is guiding, it's high-level principles, we've each got to work and look to our own jurisdictions. So we've been working very closely with our authorities here in South Australia, because at the end of the day, it's the local health regulations, it's the state government or territorial principles that we've all got to work to. And I think one of the challenges, particularly for an event manager in our domestic industry, going from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, the principles are actually going to vary. So I know Caroline mentioned earlier about 4 square metres. in South Australia, we're 2 square metres.
Yeah.
So again, communication, which is the theme of this segment, of course, is absolutely key. So there's been lots of collaboration. There's lots of working together. That's got to continue because there's clearly a long way to go. And I certainly get the feeling that it doesn't matter if you're a big business, medium business, a small business, we're in it together, but businesses are at various levels, and it's critically important that we support one another during these times.
Yeah, absolutely. And Damien, do you want to tell us a little bit about the SAFE plan, or the SAFE plan that the Bureau's put together? Because I loved,
There it is.
I love a prop. Fantastic, because I loved when that came through via email to see then, you know, I'm seeing events, but venues, but to see a convention bureau. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Georgie. How it came about, you know, again, we're in the safety phase, aren't we? And what brings, you know, people to our destination, all the destinations around Australia, it's when people are confident. You know, we know that hybrid events are here probably for the next 2 years, give or take a little bit, maybe longer from an international point of view, but to bring people into a jurisdiction, into a destination, to meet with confidence. Confidence is everything. So we quickly thought as a convention bureau and assembled a core group of Team Adelaide members that ultimately was about embracing the broader membership here in Adelaide. How do we develop a safe solution? And we're talking obviously this morning a lot about venues and the critical importance of that. Absolutely it is, but it's more than a venue and having a risk management plan, you know, with the event manager and so forth. It's about when someone flies in, you know, into their airport, they're on transport, they go to their hotel, they then go to their meeting venue, unless it's inside the hotel itself. It's an end-to-end solution. So again, how we thought about how do you deliver confidence to a client, to the end user being the delegate or the customer abroad, how do you deliver confidence? So we pulled together 10 Team Adelaide members to essentially develop a level of principles that work to our government's high-level principles that really sort of, you know, went the extra mile to deliver a promise to the customer and the end delegate. So that's what the SAFE campaign is all about. It's about an end-to-end solution. It's about providing a promise. And so where we're at, the members are signing on, and again, some are at various stages. We're trying to help and support as best we can because that's critically important. But it's about Team Adelaide working together to develop that safe solution to deliver confidence. So we're really proud of what's come together about, you know, almost now 100 members working together, absolutely understanding safety, risk management, to deliver confidence is everything. So that's what the SAFE campaign's all about.
Fantastic. I love everything about that because it really is about that working together. And I certainly know through this time I've connected with a lot more people on LinkedIn, you know, and I encourage you all to connect with, you know, other peers on LinkedIn, share what you're doing on LinkedIn, you know, because certainly I've attended, I think I counted about 60 webinars and training sessions in the last couple of months. And most of those I found because someone has shared it on LinkedIn. So that's a really great space where we can be sharing, you know, a simple photo of, you know, a fun decal you've got, or a photo of the great lunch packs you've got set up, or Caroline's, you know, little delegate goodie bag. You know, things like, or, you know, if you're a venue, sharing your your COVID safe plan, because this is how we can really work together. Damien, how are some other ways that as an industry we can work together, as you say, to really strengthen it and create that confidence in events?
Yeah, I think as we've been talking about this morning, you know, risk management is absolutely everything. Unfortunately, and really unfortunately, we're moving into a really litigious period. So we've got to get it right. We need to know our obligations, legal obligations, absolutely encourage everyone to understand their insurance obligations as well. Again, that's a very negative point of view, but we, you know, all the operators truly need to understand that because brand health is everything. You know, unfortunately, if something comes up, you know, that's damage to the business, or the product or service. It's damage to the destination. So, as again we've been talking about, we need to have our risk management in place. And again, you know, a number of businesses are sadly still in hibernation because of the decimation of the industry. So I think a really strong message, it's all about communication. You know, caring is sharing, that old adage, and it's never become truer. We're in it together, because if anyone gets it wrong, and as we've spoken about, it's not necessarily about the destination or the venue getting it wrong, it's the obligations of the client and the end user being the delegate as well. We need to control it. We're all in it together, because, you know, if there is an outbreak, if there is a cluster, that's very damaging. And, you know, look at poor old Melbourne at the moment, your jurisdiction, Georgie. You know, we don't want to face lockdown again. So critically important. It's no longer a competitive environment. We need to get open, you know, to be successful, to make money. Ultimately, that's why, you know, we're in it. We're about driving the economy of Australia. We've got to share. Doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are. If you've got something to share, please do. What we're doing from a Adelaide Convention Bureau point of view, and our members, we've held a series of webinars in early August. We'll have another, probably an in-person forum, where it's literally for the members to share information. Because again, is the industry really going to be fully up and running? There's going to be a few local events and functions. Interstate travel is probably still, you know, dribbling along. It hasn't got the full momentum. So, you know, we've got time to get it right, but we've got to collaborate. We've got to work together. We've got to communicate. Absolutely, we've got to share. Really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm just conscious of time. We've got one question I do want to hit on, but I just want to pick up on that working together, and Fetching Events has actually released a new service, a COVID safe event plan package, where we can work with another event manager or with organisations to step you through all those elements, so you can work with your venue on not only creating that safe event, but keep maintaining that experience and ensuring you've got everything in place. And I'll pop some information about that in the chat function now, and I know our other panellists will pop some links in as well that they've got. But one great question we've had come in, which I think is a very key one, is with all COVID safe elements that now must be accommodated, it's, you know, example, smaller maximum packs, flow, space in bottled water, how much is this pushing up event costs, and are events becoming less economical to hold for many clients? Carly, do you want to take that? Or?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to, because it really does depend on the venue. I've got to say that up front, because this is where it takes me back to the beginning, where I was saying I've got so many COVID safe plans here from across all hotels, venues, and I've noticed some hotels are actually charging for the cost of being COVID safe, because for them that's the viable thing to do, but others are not. In the quotes we're currently receiving from hotels, there really hasn't been an increase in any costs at all. In fact, some of them have actually come down. I will say that these are the things, when we're planning, one thing I would say to everybody, have a look at what hotels are actually offering. So there's a lot of hotels now are actually reducing minimum spends because they want that business, as Damien was saying, it's about remaining viable now and making money. So they are being a lot more flexible. So look at things like cancellation policies, look at force majeure clauses are a big thing. We're getting asked about that almost daily from clients that are inquiring. But I think the actual cost, I think there is room, I saw that's from you, Susan, there's room for negotiation. If you're not happy with it, just speak to the hotel, because they are being a lot more flexible. But I can say we're getting lots of inquiries. We're seeing people are dipping their toes in the water. So it's that 20 to 40 sort of packs mark. And we haven't seen, touch wood so far, an increase. If there is, we ask them to step through why there is an increase. So it really does come down to venue, but I don't think overall there's been that much of an increase as yet.
And I just want to pick up on one thing there, is that while our capacities will be reduced, even if our restrictions allow us to run events, we do know a lot of organisations, won't let their staff go to events. So if we imagine or sort of in those early days of COVID, when large corporations, particularly maybe local governments, put event bans in place, you know, we're hearing that not everyone will be allowed to go to an event. So those hybrid or may not feel comfortable going to one. So hybrid events will be really key, and there's still fun stuff you can do with that. So, you know, we've got a gala dinner at the end of the year. We know it's reduced capacity, but we're thinking people may still want to dial in to hear the guest speaker. There's some great organisations, and there's one that I haven't worked with, but I'm going to give them a plug, called ISO Date on Instagram, who are sending out little packages. So what we could do is, someone buys a ticket to attend, to, you know, watch the live stream. They pay an amount. Not only do they get to see the keynote speaker, they get a little dessert hamper delivered to their home to sit and eat. So, you know, we've got to really think about how we can make this a great experience. So have a look in the chat function. I've posted the link to previous Adapting in 2020 webinars that we've run, which you're welcome to watch, as well as information about our COVID safe event plan package. And I know Carla, Damien and Caroline have also put information in there. So I do encourage you to click on those links, copy the links, paste them in a Word document, look at them after. But it's been really fantastic to have everyone for this panel discussion. And I know this is probably going to be the first of many that we'll hold as time goes on. So I do want to thank Carla, I want to thank Caroline, Damien, for all your time here today. Everyone who's been listening, it's been fantastic, you know, to have everyone come together. We do encourage, you know, utilise all the resources that are out there. I know, you know, Carla was mentioning before, and Carla's actually been highlighted in some industry publications recently, which has been great. But, you know, read Spice News, look at stuff that's happening on LinkedIn. For anyone who also works in large events, there's AMPSIA, which is a mass participation association that's just started up out of COVID, that are running some great things and have great resources. You know, check out, as I said, we've run 6 Adapting in 2020 webinars. There's a lot of great free stuff out there that you can tap into, and share what you're doing. We'd love to see everything that you're doing on LinkedIn. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. To my fellow Melbourneites, hang in there. We've done it before and we can do it again. We're well versed on how to do this. And to everyone, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
So
everyone.
we'll leave the chat function up for a little bit longer, so you can click on those links. But have a great weekend.
Thanks, Georgie.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Georgie.
Bye,
Bye.